What is up, folks? It is another night for the High Tech Podcast, and you are joined by Josh and Will, who's bobbing his head because we got the right music this week. Unlike last
Woo!
week, we got the wrong music. Go us! It's like we've just been doing this just for a few days, not for 182 episodes.
We're new here, just
Yeah.
is what it is. So
This is the vibe. It wouldn't be the High Tech Podcast if we didn't screw up at least one thing every week. I like that the music is continuing, then got louder, and then got quieter. I wasn't sure if that was on purpose.
I'm gonna have to practice that one a little bit, but
practicing. We're working on that. Anyway, back for another week of the High Tech Podcast. This week it is just Will and I. We don't have any fun guests like Robin. Sorry.
miss you, Robin.
Yes, we do. But we are back for another week to have some fun conversations about AI again, because that's what the whole world likes to talk about. So we'll stop talking about it when you stop viewing our videos on AI. That might be the joke. But today we are talking about AI. But before we get too far into that, another spiel reminder. Just a reminder to make sure to subscribe and follow the High Tech Podcast wherever you listen to it and wherever you'd like to. You can find us on social media at High Tech Podcast or at High Tech Pod. We know it's both. We say it all the time. Get over it. I don't know. There's nobody complaining. I act like there's people emailing us complaining. Yeah. There really isn't. It's just we feel bad about having two, so we say that every week to make ourselves feel better. You can email us at inbox@hightechpod.us if you'd like to be on the podcast. Let us know how annoyed you are by having two socials, or you'd like to tell us to stop talking about AI. I don't care. Whatever you'd like to share, you can do that at inbox@hightechpod.us, or DM us on social media, and maybe Chris or Will respond to you. Also, we have a website where every episode we do has an episode page. You can find that at hightechpod.us. There was a little bit of a debate again last week that had been mostly quelled that it's not .us, but I'd like to just reinforce with the world that it's .us. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. Hightechpod.us.
That's
our website.
Sure,
it works. Go find it. Not that it works. It's functional because it's true. That's where you can find us on the interwebs. Okay, enough of that spiel. Make sure to go follow us, like us. We finally crossed the threshold in YouTube today that we were very excited about. It's not even that big of a threshold. We've just been stuck at a certain number for so long. So keep subscribing for us. That'd be great. Anyway, so this week we're talking about AI again. So a couple episodes ago we talked about how to reduce effort with AI. And that seemed to get some good response. Everybody likes to talk about AI. And honestly, Will and I have been talking more about it between the two of us more often, both in our work environments. We've had to talk about AI more. Will's been using it more. I've had to be conversing about it more as a part of a team looking at AI. So it's been something we've kind of just wanted to bring back into the conversation. And honestly, with the Human Tech series in the fall and Christmas episodes and stuff, we really haven't talked about AI too much beyond how it came up in the Human Tech series. So we kind of just wanted to intentionally, in the next couple episodes here, the first episodes of the year, talk about it a little bit more. So it's going to come up a couple times. No big series again, just kind of some fun conversations Will and I wanted to talk about. But as we were prepping for the how to use AI to reduce effort, right? So Will and I shared 2 episodes ago, I think it was, on how to reduce effort through AI, at least how him and I do. Through a couple different tools. And out of that kind of came this question: when is it okay to use AI and not to at work? And that's kind of a question on flux, I think, a little bit, because AI keeps changing. I don't know if anybody, this episode will come out next week after we record it. As of this week, ChatGPT just dropped the AI operator. Actually, let's take a second here and jump off of that for a second. Did you see what ChatGPT dropped in beta access?
No,
I think it's only available to pro people. So us layman people, I don't think I'll get access to it through the paid version I have access to. Let me just pull this app up real quick. Well, this is a divergent here for a second.
Is it the new bot feature, like creating AI assistants kind of thing?
Well, sort of. Let me go to their page and make sure I'm not missing something. Yeah, okay, so operator. It will actually interact with websites for you. So you can send it. So I was following a thread for a little bit ago, either I forget if it was on Instagram or Twitter.
Oh my gosh.
Where people were talking about it already broke the internet because people figured out how to automate tweets with operators. So like people are automating tweets through the tool, and like going and booking things on the internet, like with this thing. Like there's now
Oh
right now
my
it's only
gosh.
accessible through ChatGPT Pro, which is like one of their highest, I think, licenses
Did
other than like
did this
enterprise.
episode just become this topic though? Because holy
Oh no,
smokes,
we'll come
could I
back.
talk about this?
I thought about changing the topic to that, but I can't play with it yet. So I don't have enough to talk about yet, other
That's
than
fair.
I
That's
have so
fair.
many things I want to use this for. Um, like, yeah, I have so many thoughts. But Claude, also one we'll be talking about today, also has, I found out today, has a version of this
An
too.
operator as well or
Yeah, it has
something.
like an operator, which in thanks for everybody bringing it up. This has been the big conversation, probably end of 2024, 2025 has been kind of the like agent AI operator
Yep.
goal. Like that's one of the
Yep.
goals people wanted to see AI get to. So give access to that. Anyway, so all of this may change because things are changing constantly around the tech conversation in general, but AI conversation for sure. And Will just found out about Operator today, so he didn't know this was a thing. So there may
Yep.
be a slight difference um, to this, but today we want to talk about when is it okay to use AI at work. So, what is the answer to that question? That's what we're trying to do today. And this is Will. I don't know about you, but this question has come up for me now multiple times at work.
Yep.
I
Yep.
left for 4 months, and then it was like the rest of the place I worked at realized AI was a thing.
They just turned the lights on.
Well, yeah, I guess, and like so now it keeps coming up, right? And there's some
Yeah.
divergent thoughts in my office on this. Even like Robin, who was just on last week, her and I don't entirely agree
Sure.
on when it's okay or not. So I'm looking for you to answer the question for me. When is it okay, Will?
When is it okay? Well, it is okay. I would personally be down for it if it would give me the opportunity to like fix my computers autonomously. Then it should be a part of all work things. Like literally just like the Matrix or something, plug a little AI bot into my computers to figure out and diagnose problems. Because as Josh and I regularly know and deal with, I have the worst computer problems. Like that's
Yeah,
something I would
Will's
love
computer's
to
not
have.
working
Just
right now, so
yeah.
he's a little one mind focused on how to solve that. But
But I'm just saying, like that'd be a pretty good thing. I would use that all the time at work. Now, when it comes to some things that we're trying to deal with at work, like this, we already knocked on the door of the ChatGPT operator conversation. But like, let's talk about a platform called Dust. Dust.tt, I think, is their website. Dust is an AI agent platform, so it's meant
oh, okay.
to um, help you build chatbots to do specific
Oh,
tasks.
yeah.
So, if you're trying to regularly work on Excel spreadsheets for reports, like let's make a Dust bot that has the skills and parameters and things that you often use in reports. And then when you're working on a report, you hand it the parameters and huzzah, it should do a lot of that work for you. Writing bots, right? So I'm someone, maybe let's say a talent acquisition partner, and I'm regularly writing the same email over and over and over again. And you could just have a template, but like, hey, you want to make sure that there's some customization. So you have this assistant write the email for you, or even better, in international business, laws change across every state line in the States, and they change across every country line across the globe, right? And so if you had a bot that could be like, hey, I'm trying to, for sales purpose, I'm trying to make a pitch to a company that's of this size in this context in the Netherlands. What do I need to know to make sure that this sales offer is legitimate legally, or so, like I'm making stuff up. I don't know in these hypotheticals, but instead of having to go to ChatGPT and work through it every time to figure out what you're supposed to do, and of course ChatGPT, unless you've got a premium license, you've got to be careful about what you're putting in there regardless. But if you're using something like an agent that you can build to do the work with you, I think there's a big difference using a tool like that than when we talk about work in the context of like, dang it, the name's going to slip me right now. The popular image generation platform. We used it.
Midjourney?
Midjourney, like, right? Like, I think there's a difference between me using an AI bot to help me write emails better and someone using Midjourney to make art and sell it. I think there's two big camps here to set and that we can address, because I think using AI to do our work better is different than using AI to do the work for us. And there's
Okay.
overlap, but I think that
Yeah,
holding
yeah,
on to
yeah.
those two things is pretty helpful to start this conversation.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're getting into two veins of what I see as a part of this conversation, right? So, like when we're talking about when is it okay to use AI, and we're specifically talking in a work environment, right? Because this is,
Yep.
I think it's a big question that's happening across corporations. Some are just jumping into it, others are more cautious. Others are basically like, I don't use AI to do anything.
Right.
As much as Will and I like using AI for things, I love 37 Signals, who we both really like. They just seem to basically be like, it's
Nah.
it's a thing, I guess. And like they just like don't care about it.
Even their two most recent product launches for 2025, they just teased it, right? I saw your post, you liked it, I
yeah,
liked it. Like, they have nothing to do with AI, while every other company is sprinting out of breath to get to the front of the AI line.
yeah.
37
They're
Signals
just
just
like,
sitting over there, just like,
we're just freaking cool tools. Anyway, I think there's two veins to deciding how when it's okay, right? So the first vein, I was gonna go a little bit off of where Will's going, and then I'm gonna come back to where you were going, Will.
yep.
I think the first question is, it's about, you need to ask yourself, what are you going to be putting into it, the type of data, and how is that data being used in the AI platform? Like, what type of AI do
Sure.
you have, right? So,
Yeah.
like, Will and I regularly are working with sensitive data, right? That is, not government level sensitive data, that they seem to be able to just release that accidentally anyway. So, the,
Oops.
we're talking like, but still, like, I'm working with like academic data, like student data, grade information, stuff that falls under certain
And faculty
regulations.
members don't want their, like, if a faculty member
Yeah,
wrote something, they don't want it in AI, right? Like,
yeah, they don't
that's
want it in
that
there,
sensitivity.
right? So I think that's your first question. What type of data are you putting in? Is it sensitive data? Is it something that you don't already own
Mm-hmm.
access to? And even if you do, then the other question becomes what type of AI tool do you have access to? So Will kind of alluded to this, right? But if you're just using basic ChatGPT, the free version of ChatGPT, like they have full rights to use that data, and it's totally like is morally murky as that world is right now. I would argue, at least
Right.
right now, they are
Right.
that tool. You have signed a waiver to use that tool, so now you're inputting their data. The
Yep.
data they
It's
got before you
legal.
inputted data is the stuff that's a bit more murky. But the things that you're putting in right now, if you're putting it in there, it's not OpenAI or other AI tools' faults that you're putting that data in there. So, like, for example, I don't think it's okay for people working in education to just be dropping Excel files with student data into free Chat GPT
Right.
or into a free AI tool.
Big no.
Um, because that data, and I want to make sure I'm not kind of perpetuating something that I've seen come up before. I remember talking to somebody at another organization who was like, well, we can't put stuff into AI, into free AI, because what if one of our competitors is also using AI and they ask it for that information? It's like, okay, first of all, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not how AI works. They can't just get the data. But it does mean that data is now influencing other things. It's in there. It's something that you just can't get back, right? At least is my opinion.
Right.
And so I would not put that data in there. But um, I know a group in education that's been looking at ChatGPT Teams, which we'll talk about later on the podcast, probably in a future episode. ChatGPT just released this new kind of like smaller organization plan that's called Team. It's a Teams plan. And in that Teams plan, you are given like a locked down version of ChatGPT. Like, yes, you get access to the entire internet like you would in regular ChatGPT, but your data is isolated. Like, it's not being used anywhere else. That's
Yep.
a part of the contract of the Teams plan that you get. And so in that case, I feel better about putting certain data into there because it's only in our isolated account. And so it has access to it. So those are places that I might feel better about using it from a data standpoint.
Yeah.
Right? If your organization has its own version, like Will, I know you guys have a locked down version of an
Yes.
AI tool, that's then fine. Throw data in there, drop Excel files in there. I'll show later how I used Claude to aggregate not sensitive data just for fun for this podcast, but like throw in Excel files, data. For goodness sakes, don't spend hours aggregating data anymore. AI should be used for those things.
Right.
And like there is good at those things
Yep.
when used properly. So like that's the place. That's one of those places or veins that I think you have to deal with is what type of data are you putting in, and
Mhm.
what type of AI tool are you using to put it into. And I've seen a lot of institutions now, and even workplaces, use multiple AI tools, and they classify their data. So what they mean is they classify it by different levels. So certain data is
Mm.
okay to put into this
Yes.
AI tool, but
Yep.
certain data is not okay to put into this AI tool, and this is why. But you can put it in this AI tool. So if you're not sure about that, ask your employer if they have something like that. If they don't, start pushing for something like that. Employers who keep saying they want to be ahead of the AI game also need to start setting up infrastructures for using AI. So this is one of those things. If you're listening and you have the ability to help do that, start there. In some
Right.
ways, I think when you're
Right.
evaluating when to use
Well, and like these are
it.
awesome details and like specifics of. I'll step back one more step before I even step into what I was thinking. Josh is bringing a very informed posture to this. So to put us in context, right? I'm a user. I am following the rules at my company, but I am not a decision maker, nor am I even an influencer. Like I know the influencer in my business, and he's doing great things to push people and to get new tools in. That's how I learned about Dust as an example. So I'm using things that the influencer is using, but even my primary influencer at my business is not a decision maker, right? Legal, IT, executives, those are the ones making the decisions about what my company is and isn't doing. Like you were just saying about different levels of data and all that stuff, what's allowed, which platforms we can use. Josh, I'd say you're both an influencer and a decision maker because you're making decisions for your team, definitely. You are also influencing
Yeah,
the institution because you're on committees and all that other stuff that you're
yeah.
involved
Well,
in. So
he hasn't actually met yet, but when I am,
fair,
I
fair.
don't know. I'll tell you how it goes. Um,
I just like to set that as context, though, right? Like both of us are coming at this from as AI users and with different levels of influence or impact on decision making. But with that in mind, the question we're trying to drive at, we want to answer in this episode is it okay to use AI? When is it okay and when is it not to use AI in work? And I think one of those big things definitely comes back to whatever you're allowed to, right? Like if you're like my business has given us the guardrails already. So we use Google's platform, I can't remember what it's called, and Azure's platform. They both have LLMs set up inside of them. And
yeah,
we're told we can go in like
Gemini and Copilot, right?
we don't use those names though. So I don't know if it's like
Oh,
maybe it's
there's
an
probably some
enterprise
name
level
for the
or
LLM behind. Yeah, Gemini and
it's
Copilot are their AI tools, but
we call the one Azure and we call the one Vertex. So I don't know if those are
okay,
like
those are
again
probably
enterprise
yeah, they're like the
names
system
or
behind the system. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
But
that's what
like
you're plugging in.
we're put in there and we're saying we're pretty much told you have free range, but we're told do not use any feature that says beta. Like there are some that say beta or preview or whatever. It's like literally I'm in there and I could just chat Gemini or Vertex or whatever the heck it's called. And if I click the wrong thing, I could not be following acceptable use, right? If I click into one of the beta features, those are aggregating and using that data. And it's like, like this is before we even answer the when is it okay? It's a sketchy world because even me with guide rails, with an acceptable use policy and with all the stuff, the good stuff day to day that should protect me and protect the business, there are still weak spots. Like I could literally just click the wrong link, start asking a question, and I'm suddenly now not doing something that's allowed. Like
Yeah,
it's a tough world to work through this. And like when you have those kinds of layers that Josh was talking about, let's just use a 1, 2, 3 scale. Let's say level 2 and 3 data is primarily okay. So level 1 data is classified. It's PII, like personally identifiable information. It's health information. It's whatever. Level 1 cannot go in. Okay, cool, easy. We just write that off. We say anything that's in level 1, no. Level 2, then maybe it's like specific company data, but it's not pricing data. Okay, so if as long as it's not pricing data, you could ask a question about it. But then level 3 is just like as long as it doesn't have a name, do whatever you want. even those scales could get close, because like, well, what if I ask a question about pricing? Am I going to get too close to something that I shouldn't? As long as I don't put a price in it, maybe I'm okay. But what if I get, like, it's tough. It's not black and white when we're dealing with these things, to say like you can ask it all of these questions, you cannot ask it these questions. Folks, this takes discernment. It takes wisdom, it takes practice. And I hate to say it, it will probably take a few mistakes too. I would imagine
Yeah.
people have already made them, but like, be careful. You're taking these steps in there and you're going to use this stuff for work. Ask the question 2 or 3 or 4 times before, like I guess the famous metaphor adage is measure twice, cut once. If you're a carpenter, right? You measure your cut twice, make sure you've got the length you want, and then you cut it once. Measure 4 or 5 or 6 times when you AI, because it's like the mistake you make could be very expensive or harmful. You could reveal, confidential information. You could lose your job. You could put a bunch of people's names out into the internet and their addresses. Like, you don't know. The things that you're dealing with here are very sensitive. It's very, I think, important to take this seriously and not just kind of jump into it, because like my context, I have these super powered tools available to me, but if I click the wrong thing, I could get into trouble, and I gotta pay attention. I gotta be ready for that. And our company, our stance is like, do not use a tool that's not approved. Like, if I'm not allowed to use ChatGPT. If I use ChatGPT, it is probably something that I could get fired for. So it's just like, don't do it. Now, I can use it for my personal time, but like, again, if I'm trying to use something for work purposes, you got to follow the rules. I'm a kind of guy who typically likes to, ask forgiveness, not permission. But when it comes to AI, I think this is one of those ones where you just got to follow the rules and be on top of it, because if you mess something up, it's going to be bad. Now, do you think, Josh, that we have covered, because we're definitely covering a lot of logistical things, but I think there is still maybe a moral question here.
Oh yeah, no. We have not gotten to the other side of the question, in my opinion, which is like the data side is a little bit more clear, in my opinion. I think it's like it's whatever your work institution's policies have set up. If they haven't set up anything, which there are a lot in education who haven't,
Right.
then I do think it's kind of like a be very cautious. Don't put student or client information into it, unless you have a locked down. Ask what type of access your organization has access to. They'll be able to tell you whether or not is it just kind of like an open access, or do they have something in the contract with whatever provider that the data is locked down to just your institution, your organization's instance, right? I think that's simpler. The other question then becomes, okay, the thing I don't think all workplaces dictate clearly, or like institutions do, at least entirely, is like when is it okay to use it then for yourself, right? So like, we're not talking just data upload. We're talking like, is it okay to use it to write a report for you? Is it okay um, to leverage it as a research tool? Is it okay to, all these different things, right? And this is fresh on my mind because Will is right. Will and I are in slightly different vibes right now. When it comes to AI, like I'll probably in this year be helping write like a policy for our team on how to use AI preliminarily. And we've been debating back and forth, right, about what guidance we give people. So let me give an example of not my team. Okay, so let me preface that because a few team members
Hypothetical example.
No, it's not. It's not a hypothetical.
Okay, great.
It's not.
It's just not your team.
It's not the entire team I work on. Okay, I have seen people like answering questions at work or in their workplace environments by using AI to answer those questions. Like, and I'm not talking like how many people, drove a Civic in New Jersey. You know what I mean? I'm not talking like data questions. I'm talking like, I want your opinion on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally just give back like a ChatGPT response. Like
a student would do.
Yes, like a student would do. And here's my general thing I've been working out. I'm curious your thoughts about this, Will.
Okay.
I do not think it is okay at work to use AI to create something if I haven't touched it at all. Like
Okay.
right, and I would even go down to my personal kind of philosophy is, and this is just a personal thing, I know not everybody else is this way, but I kind of feel like this is the route is I'd prefer if what you provide me that has had AI involved is something you wrote first or you
Sure.
created first, right?
Sure.
Unless we're talking like imagery, or things like that. Like in our case, for Will and I, it's different. We work in learning and development, so like imagery is not. We're not literally our product is not the art.
We're not making
Our product
art.
is
We're
the learning
making.
experience, and the imagery is a part of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it is totally okay for us to create AI imagery and use that in the learning experience to create a better learning experience. So, like for us, I would be totally okay with somebody just creating imagery, right, out of it for their course or whatever they're doing. But
Yeah.
like for the actual content, like I want it to come from a person first, kind of is my
Okay.
philosophy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and this is where like certain people would disagree, probably. I'm not saying don't use AI for brainstorming and things like that. Like I'm totally cool with that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like where you use it, like brain. Will and I have used this. We're like trying to come up with episode ideas, and we're just stuck. And we get
Yeah.
AI to generate. We know a general topic we want to talk about. It generates a bunch of ideas. But then here's the thing: Will and I use like 10% of the ideas that the AI ended up giving us. Like
Yep.
it's really just those ideas generated other ideas. It's kind of like having just a partner with you that you can kind of bounce
Right.
ideas off of,
Right.
but that partner happens to have access to the entire internet.
Right.
Like that's the
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. What are your thoughts on that take from the
Well,
moral side?
what I like about that is the impetus on humans to still human. Like I think that there is a tendency with the thought about AI to like give up to give up the agency we had to create stuff. So, okay, your job as an instructional designer is to write learning objectives, to write knowledge checks, to write assessments, to do editing and stuff on narrative content. All of that AI can do. AI can write learning objectives. It can write knowledge checks. It can edit and proofread. Like you, a faculty member that built an AI bot to be an instructional designer would not need to use an instructional designer like that. All things, just a very like vanilla statement there. I don't know. Like you could do that. Would it be good? Would it be beneficial? Would you get the
No,
same outcomes? I
I
don't
can
think
tell
so.
you it's not, and I don't care how good AI ends up getting. And maybe I'll be wrong. 12, 2 years from
I
now,
don't
I
care,
don't
but
know.
maybe I'll be wrong.
But we're talking about the world right now, okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have seen this, especially in learning and development, and I've seen it in other places. But right,
Yep.
like people just ask, like, okay, your goal is you're supposed to come up with. I just saw this off of somebody with Bruff's Intentional Tech book. You're supposed
Yeah.
to come up with like um, some stuff based on that content, right? And they
Yep.
used AI to generate the whole thing, right?
Yep.
And like, um, it was so devoid of context of
Sure.
the actual environment,
Yep.
right? And like it's just a pure example of where like that's where it falls short. It doesn't know the human context of what you're dealing with. Now there are ways to get that with AI, like if you're really good at prompting
I
and
was
things,
already thinking that, like but
right? Like
that
there's
takes a lot
ways
of
to,
work,
to do
right?
that, but it's a lot of work and it still needs the human involved. And the
Yep.
problem in this case was the human involved didn't have the context, and to their defense, they had been given this task that probably wasn't entirely fair to give them.
Sure.
But then they used AI to try to create it.
Right.
And so they couldn't tell when it was completely context devoid.
Right.
But AI didn't know what questions to ask. And so you end
Yep.
up
Yep.
getting this like generic, horrible thing, right?
Right.
And
Nobody
like,
had the answer. Like the human
no,
didn't have the answer, the AI didn't have the answer, and so you just had this very
yeah.
yeah.
And so you get this thing that's just not there, right?
Right.
And I think that's where AI just is not going to be able to replace that for at least the
Right.
time being.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think for me, it's like it has to start or end with a human,
Yeah.
right?
I was
And
thinking to
it
that
always
exact
should
level. Yeah.
probably end with a human anyway. Like there always should be you at the end somehow. It just
Yes.
depends on what it's looking like, right? So like
There
a
needs to be a
practical
human
example.
sandwich or
Yeah, we could probably we'll workshop that that title. But I don't know how I feel about human sandwich, but we'll rework it a little bit. Human panini, maybe. I don't know. I don't like that anymore than sandwich. That's for sure. So no. The point being, like a practical example, right? Is and this is where like Robin and I differ in some things, right? Is that listen, my strong suit is definitely not writing. Like
sure.
that has never been my strong suit. It is something I've definitely gotten significantly better at over the
Right.
last decade,
Right.
of working in learning and development. But it's just never been my strong suit. I'm better at like telling you my thoughts out loud, and I'm better at speaking. It's why I've gotten into speaking environments, right? Is that that's my space, right?
Because you're an
So
auditory learner, right? Throwback to a
no,
couple episodes ago.
no, because that's a trash fire, and I told Justin about that. That was a few episodes ago. L&D hot takes. If you're curious what that references to, Will is crazy. But anyway, it's my leading as far as communication wise. It's just never been my strong suit, and
Yeah.
partially because I just didn't pay attention in school, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, where I've found AI really helpful lately is like I will write something, and then I use, in this case, Notion AI as my writing assistant to kind of just like it's like having an editor at hand every time, and it's like I just throw it in, and I'll usually just say I'll use a prompt that's like improve writing,
Yep.
and it will tweak it, and I'll often tweak it after it's done because sometimes it changes something. I'm like, that's not what I was saying.
Right.
But usually it ends up finding a few words or a way to say something that was like a little bit shorter or just better said than the way
Right.
I say it. Write it because I just write how I talk, and that doesn't come through in writing very well.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'll use that, and that's where Robin and I one time were talking talking about this, and she's like, "Wait, you used it for like that discussion post?" And I was like, "Yeah, but like, not. I wrote the post.
Right.
I just
Right.
had it rewrite some of the things that didn't make as much sense when I wrote it. You know, like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. I
and
needed an
like it's
editor.
still
Like,
yeah, it's still me. It's not the AI didn't write the
yeah.
terms of the word. They just re-chose a few wording structure
Right.
elements to
Well,
like for
and
me,
there's
and that helps me
sometimes
better communicate at the end of the day without having to spend hours on this post that
right.
shouldn't take me hours. I need to go do other stuff. I have other work
Right.
that's more important than that post. It's not that the post wasn't important. It's just
Mm,
I can't take a whole day on that post. You
exactly.
know what I
It's a
mean? Like I
time
need to go
effort
do
thing.
something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I think like I'm not pointing the finger at Robin, just like speaking in this hypothetical context, right? Like a Robin there in that moment goes like, "Wait, you use ChatGPT to write that post?" It's like, no, I didn't. Like when we think about a student using ChatGPT to write their paper, typically they're taking the instruction and going to the
Yeah.
ChatGPT and saying like, "ChatGPT, I'm taking this class. It's worth this many points. Here are the instructions. Write me the paper." And then it spits out a 10-page paper and they copy paste and they're done. That is using AI to write something for you. What Josh is saying is, and what we're advocating for, I think I agree with you. Let's get to that point. I agree with you. I might use ChatGPT to brainstorm some ideas and then write it. I might write it and then have ChatGPT proofread it, and then both of them are going to have the human AI sandwich where I'm going to come back on the end and make sure I've read it one last time before I hit something, right? But I do not believe there's a moral issue, any wrongness to having AI involved in the working process. I do believe the last step before hitting send should always be a human review, a
Oh yeah.
human audit. I think that that's one of the most important steps is ensuring that if you have AI make you a picture, a text, a video, or whatever, anytime I use AI to make a video, I watch that video before it's done. And then I'm always editing the script or editing,
Mhm.
an animation or something. Like that's the most important step is ensuring that before something AI has assisted in creating, that a human has audited it before it goes to a public or a larger audience. I don't think there's anything wrong with that though. I think that's one of these things like in my day-to-day business work, I'm being told to do this. We are being encouraged to use AI to optimize our time, right? When I think about my number one Number one example for the value of AI in work is video creation. If I wanted to shoot a video that was on a helicopter coming in at the cliffs of Moher, running, zooming in onto a faculty speaking with a voiceover, blah, 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 and fireworks in the background, and Michael Bay blows up a car. Like, if I want to shoot that, I need a film
What
crew. I
course
need
are
a,
you working on right now?
it's
Is this
actually the
Tanks
intro.
101?
It's the
Is this
intro to
Tanks
Tanks
101?
101. Yeah,
It's intro
exactly.
to Tanks 101. Okay, perfect.
You
Actually,
took it
go.
from me. I was
It makes
my
sense.
reveal, but you
Yeah.
got it. You nailed it. No, but like if I need that footage, right? I need a film crew. I need a director. I need
Yeah.
actors, all this stuff. And that's an exaggeration. But if I need a voice to read out loud to a student, a learner, some instructions, a welcome statement, directions on how to do something, or even about a policy at work, I now have an AI tool that can do that for me altogether at like 1% of the time effort that it used to take me to build and make videos. Like I have built videos from the ground up, finding the audio, doing all
Mhm.
the animations
Yeah.
on screen in Adobe, and like I've done that. It filming the faculty. Like I shot an interview. I was so proud of this interview thing. It was for Lancaster Learns way back in the day. I interviewed like a half a dozen faculty. I asked them all the same questions. I shot 2 angles. I did all of it. It was so exciting. It must have taken me 80 or even 100, but like it took me so much time to do it. And if I wanted to do that today, I might still need to do all the time to interview my subject matter, but all of the editing and stuff, I know I could do so much quicker with the AI tools I have
Oh yeah,
available to me.
100%.
Like that is there's nothing wrong with that. And while it does take away job opportunities from voiceover actors and editors and all these other things. What it does mean is my company can put out 60 videos in a year, whereas we might have only been able to do 3 videos a year before because of budget.
Yeah. It empowers
It's
more people in some sense. Yes, it takes away certain jobs, but like this is a hard reality of every technology. Like I'm not trying to sound
yeah,
um not okay with that because like there are issues with that, right? And they're like even in learning and
right.
development, AI is probably going to take certain things away from certain jobs that existed. But the reality is that's just what happens when technology changes. There were jobs, 2 centuries ago that don't exist anymore. It's just reality.
Exactly.
Like
Yep.
it's not, and I'm not saying it's good or bad either way. I'm just saying that's a reality of what we deal with, and that doesn't
Yep.
change the hardship that people deal with. But it does empower people like us in learning development who are creating course content to create content and communicate an idea easier than we could have a decade ago,
Yes.
or even 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
Like so, like a perfect example of this. Like I think it is okay, and people are going to hate me in academics, but like I think it's okay to have an instructor of a course write scripts for a video and have AI do the audio for those scripts.
Absolutely.
Like because the amount of time it's been taking to produce video content and keep information up to date in videos
Yep.
in online courses is just unreal, the amount of effort
Yep.
that that's been taking. But now, like Will and I have been practically doing this ourselves in different places. I can tell you it's so much easier now if a section of a video changes, if you were using AI generated audio, because you just go in and change the script and regenerate that section of the video and you're good. Like you know what I mean? It's not,
Yeah.
so I'm okay with that. I think the thing for me at the end of the day, what probably you and I are both getting at is it's not black and white, do this, don't do this, because it's going to depend on the situation you're in. Like, for instance, the imagery stuff that Will and I were talking about, we're okay with generating. I'm not okay with that if your output is literally art.
Right.
And you're perpetuating this art as your own. In our
Yeah.
case in learning and development, that's not the product. That's the
Right.
product is a course. It's the
Right.
learning. So it's a different situation. So because of that, I think for me it's just asking, would be doing this with this use of AI be disingenuous
Yeah.
of what I'm being asked to do, right? So
Yeah.
like if somebody is asking for my opinion, my thoughts, my response to something, or is asking for me to design content, right? It should never be purely made with AI. Now, I may have AI involved in the process. It may be editing, or I might use it to brainstorm some ideas, or my subject matter expert or client maybe gave me an 8-page document of all the content they want in the course, and I don't want to spend 2 weeks reading it. So I ask AI to summarize what's in it for me so I can get the general ideas to start brainstorming out what a course could look like. And then maybe I go back into the content in more detail later when I need to like start developing the content more.
Right.
Like that's a practical, and these are all practical examples from like Will and I's job environment. But I know like in marketing, people who use it to generate quick posts on content. I don't think that's just, I don't think that's lying, because at the end of the day, they're just making a social media post about a piece of content and they need it to be done quickly.
Yeah.
If you're pulling information, somebody asks me to summarize a report. They're not asking me for my opinion. They just want me to summarize this information. I'm okay with having AI tell me the information and me to double check it just to make sure I didn't get incorrect information.
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
that's where I think it comes down to. Are you presenting what you use AI to do as your own work, or you, in some cases, you're not even presenting it as your own work? Somebody asked you for your opinion. You said, I asked ChatGPT, here it is. If that's what you're doing, that's just not okay.
Yeah.
And if you're out there designing content, like learning experiences, and you're having AI create the entire experience, I don't think that's okay either. Because I think a human does contextually need to be in the experience to make it work, right? And so, yeah, I don't. It's not a like yes or no type of situation. I just think it's very much like human. Us as humans need to be involved, and I think just a safety net is to say you at least need to be there in the beginning and the end,
Yeah.
in some sort, whatever that looks like. And then it depends on the task you're doing.
Yeah.
I think is the big deal. So, yeah, I don't think it's a perfect answer. We'll probably come back to this topic because I'm realizing there's probably a bit more we could dig into.
I
And
love this because we are
yeah,
dealing with this in our day-to-day work all the time right now. This is something that Josh and I can't get away from. Like we have this as it's if anybody's ever familiar with the joke on like job descriptions and stuff, like all the regular responsibilities and the ability to lift 100 pounds of whatever, like as other duties as required kind of statement at the end of any
yeah,
job description. AI is now that. Like also some proficiency with AI has become like a standard point in our
yeah. People are
field
looking
and in
for
our
it for
jobs.
sure.
So we can't get away from it.
Yeah, and I think
Now,
one before I jump
yeah.
into this next part, I just thought of this
Yep.
one last thing, one last story to kind of encompass this. Right, is like I remember recently I was writing. What was I doing? I was doing UX testing for some form thing
Okay.
we were doing
Okay.
as part of the process that Robin and I talked about last week. And I needed to send a email to like 20 people to ask them to be a part of this testing. And
Yeah.
so instead of writing individual email, I had AI create a template, and I put, with the information I needed in it, I double checked it, make sure it was accurate, put it in. I sent it to people. And one person could tell AI was involved, and they ended up, this is just encapsulating something I want to encapsulate here for a second.
Yeah.
This seems like this is written by AI. This is kind of disingenuous. And I responded back and said, it's not, though. This is the question I wanted to ask you. I don't.
What?
This is an example of what Will and I are talking about. I never pretended that email was handwritten by me.
Right.
Um, I It was a template email sent to multiple people, and in that case,
Right.
AI is totally fine to be used. If I had written that email to that person saying, "Here are my deep thoughts about our relationship as coworkers, and my what I think is great about you," and I had AI write that, disingenuous. So like, there's
Yeah.
an example of where like it's not black and white. Sorry, that thought popped up in my head. I thought it was a fun story, and there you go. Anyway, on that note, Will and I would like to talk about an AI tool today before we end the episode that is not ChatGPT. So some of you have probably heard of Claude AI. This is another AI that's been bouncing around. Claude's not new. Claude's been around
Right.
for a while. But Claude really came on my radar when a few people I follow who use AI started talking about using Claude a bit more. And I used it a little bit. And so Will and I kind of wanted to just talk a little bit about it. So if you're interested in AI, Claude is another solution similar to ChatGPT. I think the only reason, well, let me ask Will first. Will, what was so both of us, Will and I have not used Claude a ton, and so in
Yeah.
preparation for this episode to give our opinion, we both use Claude AI a little bit more than we normally do. Will tends to use his in um, organization solution more and ChatGPT more, and I tend to
Right.
use Notion AI all the time because it's just in the environment that I live. And so we decided let's use Claude and see how it goes. So Will, what was your take on Claude using it for the first time?
Well, it's the most secure AI tool I've tried to use. And I guess that's a good thing or bad thing. Like just even trying to get logged in, you have to give it an email address. You can't just talk to it. You have to log in. You have to get information from it. But what actually drove me a little bonkers was like it had a pretty it had a good onboarding, but it was I just want to use Claude for a quick question, and it gave me all this stuff like, what's your name? What are you interested? I was like, I just want to, I'm used to ChatGPT. You open ChatGPT, it just says, what do you want to know, right? And you just type in something and go. Whereas Claude actually gives you more hand holding. It is telling you what it is. It tells you it's an LLM. It tells you what it's going to do. It tells you the features that it's using. It tells you which one, like, I'm using Claude 3.5 Sonnet because this is the limited free plan. It gives you a lot of kind of hand holding and introduction. Now, because you have to log in, it also does save all your chat. So ChatGPT, you can open chatgpt.com and just start talking to it. Now, you'll lose that chat unless you log in, right? So there's no history for your
But I
sake.
mean, most people would log in with ChatGPT, so
It is true. But Claude kind of forces that along. The other side, though, that I think that Claude is trying to do, which is good, is create an experience for you. So ChatGPT can do that. You have to very intentionally do it. But Claude asks you your name. Claude keeps all your chats. Claude, if I tell Claude that my computer is a Lenovo Tower, it will remember my PC is a Lenovo Tower. If I tell it my laptop is a Dell XPS, it's going to know my Dell XPS. So anytime I refer to those things in any future chat, it's keeping this corpus of knowledge around me, which should and does make working with it easier, right? It has information about me and it's what then also skeeves me out is it has information about me and I don't like it, but this is the world of AI. So
that's the AI. And I will say, too, I think probably the way you're using ChatGPT does all of those things. And Claude
right,
does, like, Claude, I think, was one of the first ones that did projects before ChatGPT did, but ChatGPT now does that so you can create a corpus project where, like, you put a bunch of
right.
information in, it remembers all of those chats, everything Will's talking about. ChatGPT does that. I actually started to do a little bit of research when I started using Claude for us to talk about in this episode. What is the big difference between the two? And to be honest, there's not a giant difference between Claude and ChatGPT. They are using different models. But I will say this, okay? I think for my use of Claude and ChatGPT, I will say this. If you're looking for one singular AI tool to do everything you want, image generation, video, voice, text, Claude isn't your solution. Okay, ChatGPT would be closer to your solution. Now at this point, OpenAI has released Dolly and Sora and a whole bunch of other stuff that's connected into ChatGPT that with paid accounts, you can do all of that generation through ChatGPT now.
Yeah.
The thing that I think Claude impresses me about, though, and that Claude's gotten a reputation for, is that Claude is better at writing than
Uh,
ChatGPT is. And is a little bit more of a sophisticated text model. So it won't do image generation, it won't do video, but it will do like visualizations for data. I was looking into this a bit and even using it myself. I can tell you, I do think it's better at more. It has more of like an analytical approach to how it does it, which gets the stuff that Will experienced.
yeah.
Is that it's trying to get to know you and analyze, and it kind of goes for more depth than breadth in general, right? So like,
Mhm.
and I can tell that in the way it's working, right? So like a perfect example, I'm gonna share my screen here in a second, but I'll bring it up.
Ooh.
So I found some innocuous data to test this with Claude, because the thing I love right now about it, AI the most is just data visualization tools that have
Yeah.
started to come up. I think it's super powerful. So I'll share my screen here real quick because I don't think anything on here is dangerous. Okay, so this is a dashboard I created from volumes of tickets for the team I'm a part of. We respond to tickets for the LMS, right? So it's a dashboard that took me hours to create an Airtable. Now it just runs, but it took a while. And it just shows volume right now. So that's why I'm okay showing that here, because it's not really showing anything sensitive at this point, just showing the amount of numbers of things responded to. But so it shows that information. So I decided, this tells me how many tickets by requester on the ticket system. And so I decided to drop this into Claude as a test. So I exported out the data, all the data, a couple disclaimers, the data that I threw in didn't have any identifiable person data in it because I'm using free Claude. It just had like the ticket numbers and created dates and categories, stuff that totally I don't care if this has it.
Right.
So I dropped this in, and this is the full conversation. So I dropped that in. I told it to look at that CSV file. I told it to look from July 23 to June 30th, 2024, and asked it to tell me how many tickets by requester type. So here's the cool thing, right? So those of us using, like, we pay money for this tool to do this, right? Those of us not using data for this tool will know is would either have to go into Excel, do some coding to find, do some formula work to find out this information, or upload it into another tool. But here's the thing that is the depth of Claude. If I would have done this in ChatGPT, it might have gotten it, but I can tell you one thing I don't think it would have caught. It caught that when I said this, 0 tickets were showing up in that range, and I thought that was odd because I'm asking it for information about tickets.
Right.
So it actually figured out that the date field was using a different parsing model than what it identifies, than what it expected. So it adapted that visualization for that new parsing model, fixed it, and then gave me this chart.
All without a second prompt. It did it. It did that on its own.
Yeah, no, without a second prompt. That was like 30 seconds. It did all of that, and then the only second prompt. So it did all of this. It created this bar graph. I looked at it. I was like, well, the numbers aren't the same. And then I realized, oh, I forgot to tell it to filter these 2 things out that I had already filtered out in the dashboard. So I just said, filter out this category and any tickets with this subject, and it said I'll modify it, and it updated the visualization, and then it was correct. Right. And so that took me a couple minutes. And then I was like, let's have some fun. I had a ticket category thing in there, broke it up. I was like, can you go ahead and break up that category? And I think this will show me what it looked like then. Yeah. So it looked like this then. I didn't love this chart. So I was just like, hey, I'm not liking that chart. How about you try a donut chart on the second one?
Oh my gosh.
So it did. Quick. And I didn't love the donut chart either. So I was like, I'm going to have some fun with Claude. So I was like, it's kind of hard to read. Do you have any thoughts on a different format? It's easy to display the names. And it came up with a method where it was only going to show categories with 10 or more tickets as its solution. But it broke the visualization. So I responded back. I said, something went wrong. I can't see the visualization down below. It was like, sorry, let me fix that. And it fixed its own visualization. And then we went back and forth for a little while because I was not specific enough. So I was like, well, this is now hard to read over here. And so I told it that. And it fixed it, but then it looked weird. And so I was like, okay, we went back and forth a couple times until we got this solution that was a bit more readable.
That's legible. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So now, could have I done that in my Airtable tool pretty easily? Yes, I could have.
Right.
But for somebody who doesn't have access to that, who doesn't know what Will and I know, this is like a normal person could have just uploaded that data. I did not give it any specific formula pieces. I didn't do anything. And like a practical example, if I hit retry, I think it'll rerun it here in a second. There's something I want to show you when it reruns it. It's coding that visualization for you, like live. Now I know ChatGPT will do some stuff like this, but this is an example of where I just think Claude's a little bit better at this. And I didn't have to give it as much context. And this is what Will was talking about.
Right.
ChatGPT, I would have probably gone back and forth a couple more times with, because Claude kind of anticipated some issues because it's a bit more analytical.
Yeah.
And so that tweaked it. So I can publish this publicly online if I wanted to, or I can get the code for it if I want to put that on a website, or just simply like grab that image if you're just like
Right.
visualizing this
Copy
real quick
paste as
for a
a
report or
screenshot or whatever.
whatever, you know.
Wow.
So
That's
that was that. The
wicked.
other example I want to give here real quick is I uploaded an image of a dashboard I created that gives like response times. We had switched over to this new shift model. And so for those listening to the podcast, sorry, we've been doing a lot of visuals. So please go over to YouTube and check it out. I'll describe as much as I can. But so we did this. I threw in an image of it, and I asked it summarize how our response times were impacted by the Freshdesk is the tool shifts from a port in the image. Right now, I already have this image already breaks that down a bit, but it doesn't like talk about it. I had to write a report where I talked about it, so I had to write this. It's based on data, and it gives me the response times. It pulled it out of the image. It gives more response times. It gives, and this is where I think Claude goes a step farther. It gives commentary on it.
Yeah.
So it says a reduction of about 8 hours, about 40 minutes faster. And then down here it says the most notable impact, and it summarizes it down here. Okay.
Wow.
As opposed to, I did this with Notion AI, which is using basically ChatGPT, OpenAI. I mean, they're basically using OpenAI solutions. I did the same thing because it has a solution. I screenshotted it real quick. And it gives me a very similar format. I will note this. So it's not gigantically different, but you will notice it has no commentary. It doesn't give like the breakdown at the bottom is just less.
We're not seeing Notion.
Written. Oh, you're not seeing it?
No, we're still seeing Chrome.
Give me 1 second.
It's all good. I'll do the Jeopardy song.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
I tried sharing Windows. Oh.
The cool screenshots. I still have 2 big things to share about Claude. Like, he's getting into some really good things. They're getting to the details of all this, but there's still more that Claude can do. That's fantastic. So go ahead.
So anyway, now we're seeing Notion here. Okay, I took a screenshot, so it's not perfect, but you'll see here the format's basically the same, but there's no commentary like Claude had.
Yep.
And Claude had some more down here. So like as I was testing and Claude just like is really good at like the writing side of responding. And so I'm interested to try out. I've seen some reviews of Claude saying it's a better writing assistant than others, and better at like contextual brainstorming and like pulling knowledge together. So I kind of just want to play with that. I know there's been people who've used Claude. Guy wanted to create this like entire project for video recording where like if you used a airsoft gun and pulled a trigger, it would flash lights, so it would look like a muzzle flash on the video. And he knew he could like use a Raspberry Pi to do too. And he used Claude to figure that all out. Claude gave him a step-by-step model on how to do it, and it wasn't perfect, but he was able to do this because he asked Claude how to do it, and through a couple prompts, Claude anticipated it. And he gave a similar review that Claude was better at anticipating things without context than ChatGPT was.
Sure.
That it just seemed to do better at kind of like analyzing what you were trying to do than ChatGPT. And I can attest to that. ChatGPT and Notion AI, both using the same backend, I have to give it more context sometimes than I would like. And so like I'm just impressed, I think, with Claude's ability to do that. So
that's awesome.
My take.
Well, and so I actually have 2 quick things on it because this has been a great long episode, but 2 things that it's doing that are different from GPT. Well, I don't know if it's exactly different, but I see the difference of it, right? So they note that they've built it as a quote unquote constitutional AI. They wrote a constitution in it of what it can and cannot do.
Yes.
I know ChatGPT probably has those parameters in it as well, but one of the things that's significant. Yeah, right.
I did research on that too, and I forgot to mention that they have a like almost like a moral code that's a bit different than ChatGPT's.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've cued it to kind of do no wrong. Okay. And one of the things, well, this also comes from the fact that it's run by a company called Anthropic. So they're trying to be people centered in their approach. They're not trying to be we don't need to be apples to apples here, but I tried to ask it, can you help me write a lie? Can you do something deceptive? And it said, I aim to be helpful while staying truthful. So I cannot assist you in deliberately creating false statements or deception. Claude has this awareness of what it can and cannot do, and it will try to not only just say no, but then guide me. It says, I'd be happy, however, to help you with other forms of writing, perhaps creative fiction, storytelling, or whatever legitimate communication you're working on. What kind of writing were you hoping to create, right? So it has this parameter around it, trying to do good, trying to help and be a good contributor. And then it will not only just stop you from doing something it shouldn't do, or maybe you shouldn't do, but try to redirect you. It tries to tell you something better you can do instead of doing the bad stuff. So I like, I like sometimes getting into GPT and knowing ChatGPT will let me kind of just throw things at the wall and see what comes out, right? Like I can test any thought in ChatGPT. On the other side, I like that Claude is working towards an ethical approach to content generation and AI, and it's going to guide and redirect you to do better things with it. The other thing is, one time I was talking to it. This is the first time I used it in the last week. Whatever I asked it to do, it cited real work when it gave me its response. Instead of ChatGPT, which will make up citations, I don't know if it's any better these days. It's infamous for making up citations. But Claude actually cited legitimate links that I could click on to other things that were giving more context, again, to the question I asked it and with the prompt I was trying to process. So Claude is not only ethical, it is trying to be legitimate and drive good creation, or ethically good creation, not just like qualitatively good, but really get you to do useful things with the work you're doing in it. So I love all the technical stuff Josh showed, and then I love the ethical stuff that I've been interacting with inside of Claude so far. Anything else, bud? We got anything else on Claude?
I think that's quite extensive.
Yeah.
I had more than I realized I would have in that moment. So no, I don't have anything else.
Cool. Folks, this has been episode 182, an hour and 2 minutes so far. So thank you for joining us. Josh and I are still in flux and working out some life stuff. It's been a very exciting start to 2025. So forgive us if we don't have all of our ducks in a row. But next episode will be something, I believe, technical. We're going to get back into some e-learning stuff, talking about like storyline and how to create content and why we might consider making content in different subject types, if that episode stays exactly as we've previously planned it. So here's the hope. Thank you for another episode. Make sure to check out all of our socials. Please do subscribe, all that good stuff. You'll see that on screen at High Tech Podcast for social media, or at High Tech Pod. Email us, inbox at hightechpod.us. If you've got an idea, you want to come on the podcast, you want to sponsor us, we'd love that. Sounds great. Email us, inbox at hightechpod.us. And of course, our website has all of our links, all of our episodes, all of the good stuff at hightechpod.us. This has been episode 182. Tune in next week for 183 on all the fun things in storyline and e-learning development. This is a wrap on this week. We are here, empowering minds,
Embracing tech.
Cheers.